The rain had started just before dawn, fine and misty, veiling the sleepy town of Ashland, Oregon, in a hush that seemed almost reverent. Wet leaves clung to the pavement outside the Whitmore family's modest White House, and fog curled around the edges of the backyard like it had secrets to hide. Inside, 4-year-old Emily Whitmore sat cross-legged on the living room carpet, crayon in hand, her brow furrowed with concentration. The paper in front of her was already streaked with deep charcoal lines, dark trees, crooked shadows, and a little girl alone in the middle of it all. She was always drawing these lately. Rachel, her mother, leaned over from the couch. "Sweetheart, why don't you draw something happy, like the sun or a puppy?" Emily didn't look up. Her voice was quiet but firm. "He's watching me again." Rachel's heart froze mid-beat. "Who, baby?" Emily lifted her eyes and pointed toward the sliding glass door, out to the trees beyond the fence. "The man in the woods." Rachel turned quickly, but of course there was nothing there, only the shimmer of rain on leaves and the steady drip from the eaves. "Emily," Rachel said carefully, "there's no one out there." Emily shrugged and went back to drawing, adding a crooked grin to the shadowy man's face. "Before we go any further, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. You won't want to miss what unfolds next." That morning unfolded like any other. David, Rachel's husband, made coffee, kissed Emily on the head, and left for his job at the nearby college. Rachel started laundry and cleaned the kitchen. Emily played quietly, her stack of drawings growing by the minute. Always the same theme: woods, shadows, and the dark figure. At lunch, Emily barely ate her grilled cheese, staring instead at the sliding door. Rachel knelt beside her. "You're not scared, are you?" Emily didn't answer right away. Then she whispered, "He doesn't like it when I talk about him." Later that afternoon, Rachel noticed Emily had drawn something different. Not just the shadow figure, but now a face, pale with eyes too large and black holes where the pupil should be. It grinned with jagged teeth. Emily had written a word below it, shaky and uncertain. "Jonah." Rachel stared. "Where did you hear that name?" Emily just smiled and said, "He told me." That night, Rachel showed David the picture. "It's getting worse. The things she says. The names." "She's only 4, David." He brushed it off. "Kids have wild imaginations. Maybe she saw something on TV." "She doesn't watch anything but cartoons," Rachel snapped. David looked tired. "Then maybe it's from those ghost stories you tell her." "I don't..." But he'd already turned back to the sports highlights. Rachel tucked Emily in with an extra blanket and a flashlight. "If you ever feel scared, just call me, okay?" Emily nodded solemnly, clutching a stuffed rabbit. That was the last time Rachel saw her daughter awake. The next morning was bright, with sun breaking through the clouds. Rachel went to do dishes, leaving Emily playing with sidewalk chalk in the backyard just like always. 10 minutes, that's all it took. When she returned with a glass of juice, Emily was gone. The gate was closed, no footprints, no sound, just the open box of chalk and a new drawing on the concrete patio, a little girl holding hands with a long-limbed figure, both disappearing into a mass of trees. Rachel screamed her name, running through the yard, out the gate, down the street. Nothing. She called David, called 911. Within an hour, squad cars lined the block. Neighbors joined the search, drones, dogs, helicopters, nothing. No sign of struggle, no sounds reported. It was as if Emily had simply dissolved. Investigators questioned everyone. They found dozens of Emily's drawings, all with variations of the same shadowy man, always near trees, always near Emily. Some even had timestamps, the same days Rachel had noted her nightmares and sleep-talking. She said, "Don't let him in," over and over, Rachel told the FBI agent, her voice breaking. And then she said his name. The agent raised an eyebrow. "Jonah," Rachel nodded. "Does that mean something?" He said nothing, just wrote it down. Weeks passed. Leads dried up. Rumors spread. Some whispered of an old recluse who once lived in those woods. Others spoke of curses, or the land being wrong, twisted. Most dismissed it all as the sad tragedy of a missing child. But Rachel knew better. She knew her daughter hadn't just wandered off. She'd been taken by something that had been watching, waiting. And somewhere, somehow, Emily had tried to warn them. The backyard was cordoned off with yellow tape before noon. Officers moved methodically across the grass, scanning for prints, broken branches, disturbed soil, anything that might explain how a child vanished in broad daylight. Rachel watched from the porch, arms wrapped tightly around herself. Her face was blank, drained of color. David stood behind her, silent, his hands trembling. "She couldn't have gone far," one deputy muttered, but even he didn't sound convinced. The gate was still locked, no footprints beyond the fence. Emily's chalk drawing on the patio was smeared by dew, but the image lingered in everyone's mind. A little girl and a tall, faceless man walking into a forest. The officer in charge, Lieutenant Marlowe, turned to Rachel. "Was your daughter afraid of anything? Anyone?" Rachel hesitated. She used to talk about someone watching her. She called him Jonah. She drew him all the time." Marlowe frowned. "A real person? A neighbor?" "No, I don't think he was real. Not in the normal sense." He gave a tight nod, like he was already filing that under parental grief-induced nonsense. But then he looked at the drawing again and paused. By late afternoon, the FBI had been called in. Agents arrived with files, field kits, and trained dogs. A specialized child abduction unit began canvassing the area. A neighbor reported seeing Emily just 30 minutes before she vanished. "She was coloring with chalk like usual," said Mr. Green, who lived next door. I waved. She waved back. Nothing strange. A drone scan of the wooded area behind the house turned up nothing unusual. No movement, no heat signatures, no hidden structures, just dense trees and underbrush. That night, Rachel couldn't sleep. She sat in Emily's room, holding the last drawing found inside, different from the chalk sketch outside. This one was on paper. It showed Emily again, this time holding hands with Jonah. But now his face had detail. Long, narrow features, sunken cheeks, eyes like black pits. She touched the edge of the page and whispered, "Where are you, baby?" By the third day, the media arrived. Reporters camped outside. News vans clogged the road. Everyone wanted the story of the vanished girl who warned of someone watching her. Social media exploded with theories, human trafficking, cult activity, even dimensional portals, but the police had no leads, no witnesses, no suspects. And then came a strange call to the tip line. A woman, voice shaking, said she remembered a man named Jonah Kane from her childhood. He used to live near those woods. Everyone thought he died decades ago. But I saw him once. Tall, quiet, always drawing in a notebook. He scared me. My mum said to stay away. Investigators pulled old property records. Sure enough, in the 1950s, a man named Jonah Kane had owned land adjacent to the forest. A reclusive artist, never married, disappeared in 1961. Case unsolved. Rachel latched onto the name like a lifeline. That's him. That's who she drew. The FBI searched archives for more information. What they found was unsettling. Jonah Kane had been known for his eerie charcoal sketches, haunting, often grotesque figures in woods or trapped in small rooms. Some said he predicted events with his drawings. Others claimed his art moved if stared at too long. But none of this brought them closer to Emily. After 2 weeks, the search was scaled back. Volunteers stopped showing up. Reporters drifted away. The forest had been combed, mapped, scanned. Nothing. No torn clothing. No signs of struggle. No blood. It was as if the earth had swallowed her whole. Rachel refused to accept it. She clung to every drawing, looking for patterns, codes, messages. She stopped sleeping. Started walking the woods alone. Her voice grew hoarse from calling Emily's name into silence. David withdrew, spending hours staring blankly at the TV. The marriage, already strained, cracked under the weight. A month later, he moved out. On the 3-month anniversary of Emily's disappearance, Rachel held a vigil. Only a few people came. The town had moved on. Too many missing kids, too many unsolved cases. Emily became a face on a flyer, another ghost in a file cabinet. But one agent, Mark Heller, kept looking. He believed Rachel. Something about the drawings unsettled him, something about the way the girl had known the name of a man dead for decades. He kept a copy of that last sketch, Emily and Jonah, in his desk. Then one night Rachel found something odd. She had been sorting through Emily's sketchbooks when she noticed a loose page that hadn't been there before. It was old, yellowed, drawn in the same childish style, but it wasn't one of Emily's. The figure in the drawing was unmistakable, a tall man with hollow eyes, standing behind a crib. Rachel stared at it, her fingers trembling. The caption beneath it read, "He comes when the world is quiet." 14 years passed like a slow erosion. Time didn't heal. It hollowed. Rachel Whitmore never left Ashland. She couldn't. Every street still whispered Emily's name. Every shadow that stretched across the lawn reminded her of that final drawing. People stopped asking how she was, stopped making eye contact in grocery stores. Her house became known as the one with the porch light always on. Inside, Emily's room remained untouched. The pink bedding, the tiny shoes lined up against the wall, drawings taped to the closet door, curling with age, a shrine to stillness. Rachel dusted the room weekly, not out of denial but ritual. It was the only place she still felt close to her daughter. David remarried. They spoke once a year, maybe. Grief had cracked them in different places, and neither could reach across the damage. Rachel didn't work anymore. She lived off disability, citing PTSD. The truth was simpler. She couldn't function in a world that had forgotten her child. Instead, she hunted. She scoured online forums about missing persons, paranormal disappearances, anything strange near wooded areas. She kept spreadsheets of cases, names, dates, locations, keywords. She mapped them. Most formed loose clusters. A few made patterns. She wrote letters to psychics, spiritualists, even conspiracy theorists. Most ignored her. Some sent vague comfort. A few charged her for false hope. But the dreams never stopped. In them, Emily was older. Not quite a teenager, but no longer 4. She stood in rooms with no walls, where the sky bled red and the trees pulsed like hearts. She always looked over her shoulder, always whispered, "He's still here." Rachel would wake up gasping, reaching for a child who wasn't there. Then one night, something changed. She had been sorting through old papers when she noticed one of Emily's drawings lying differently than she remembered. At first, she thought it was her memory playing tricks, but when she picked it up, the paper was warm. It depicted the same familiar scene, Emily in a clearing, the shadow figure looming behind her. But now, there was something new. In Emily's hand was a key. Rachel stared at it for hours, convinced she'd never seen that detail before. She pulled out old photographs trying to match it. Nothing. The key hadn't been there. She set up cameras in Emily's room, pointing at the drawings. 3 nights passed. Nothing moved. No intruders. No wind. On the 4th morning, Rachel woke to find a different drawing altered. The once blank sky now held a crescent moon. Her first instinct was fear, but something deeper stirred. Recognition. The symbols on the paper, tiny shapes scratched into the trees, matched ones she'd seen before. Years ago on a forum post about Appalachian folk magic. She dug it up again. The same sigils. Protective wards. Anchors. Rachel began sketching, not out of talent but necessity. She mimicked the drawings, copied the shapes, tried to trace the message she felt pressing at the edges of her dreams. She brought one of the altered pages to a bookstore that specialized in esoterica. The owner, a woman in her 60s named Lena Cross, took one look and asked, "Where did you get this?" Rachel explained. Lena went pale. "This is a translocation anchor," she said. "It's meant to keep someone tethered between." Rachel didn't understand. Lena continued, "If this child is still alive, she's not here. Not entirely. Someone, or something, has her caught between spaces." Rachel nearly collapsed, not because she believed, but because she wanted to believe. That night, the temperature in Emily's room dropped sharply. Rachel's breath misted in the air. The drawing on the desk had changed again. This time, it wasn't Emily in the center. It was Rachel. She stood in a forest clearing, arms outstretched, and behind her loomed Jonah Kane. His face was clearer than ever. And on the bottom of the page, in looping, childlike handwriting, "He sees you now." Rachel burned the drawing, or tried to. The paper blackened but wouldn't fully catch. Only the edges curled. The image remained, blurred but intact. She didn't sleep. Couldn't. The next day, Lena returned with an old journal she'd found in her archives. It belonged to a medium from the 1940s who claimed she'd once contacted the in-between, a realm where lost things drifted. People, objects, memories. The journal included sketches, landscapes with twisted geometry, doors hanging in mid-air, and figures drawn in the exact same style as Emily's shadow man. Rachel flipped through the pages, pulse pounding. Then she found it. A crude sketch of a girl in a dress holding a rabbit, labeled beneath, "She waits by the door." Rachel didn't cry. She couldn't. She just whispered, "I'm coming." Rachel stood at the edge of the forest behind her old home, where the earth had once swallowed her daughter. The trees looked the same, but the air felt wrong, heavy, charged like the sky before a storm. The silence was deeper here, unnatural. She gripped the old sketch in her hand, the one where the trees bore symbols that had reappeared in Emily's altered drawings. Lena Cross stood beside her, backpack slung over one shoulder, her breath visible in the late autumn chill. "This place doesn't want to be found," Lena murmured. "But it's calling to her." They stepped into the underbrush, following the marks. Rachel had memorized them. Double spirals, crossed circles, runic angles. They weren't randomly drawn. They formed a path. She didn't know what they meant, but Emily had drawn them for a reason. Half a mile in, they reached a clearing. Rachel froze. A ring of trees surrounded a depression in the ground, overgrown but not hidden. Something had been built here long ago. A root cellar, half collapsed, its wooden door rotting off the hinges. Rachel felt her stomach twist. Lena stepped forward, shining a flashlight inside. This isn't just a cellar, it's a vault. The smell hit them first. Mold, old paper, decay. Inside were broken toys, rusted cans, and bundles of yellowed pages. Rachel crouched, pulling out one of the journals. On the cover, J.C. She opened it, flipping through erratic, jagged handwriting. The entries were dated 1954, 1957, then gaps. Descriptions of dreams, shadows, things that stepped between hours. One entry read, "The girl saw me again. She's stronger than the last one. But I can't let her go, not yet, not until the door seals." Rachel's hands shook. "He was here, Jonah, he brought her here." Further inside, under a tarp, Lena found something worse. A pile of tiny shoes, dolls, some burned, others torn, and beneath them all, bones, small, brittle. Too many to count. Rachel turned away, bile rising in her throat. "Oh, God." But Lena's voice cut through her horror. "Look at this." She pointed to the cellar wall where carvings had been etched into the stone, the same symbols, but now they were complete, forming a sequence. "This is a containment spell," Lena whispered. "This place was made to hold something, or someone." Rachel stared at the last page in the journal. A drawing, primitive but powerful. A girl inside a circle. Her face, unmistakably, Emily's. "She's still in it," Rachel said, voice hoarse. "He's keeping her there." They left the cellar just as the wind picked up, hissing through the trees. Rachel clutched the journal tightly. They hadn't heard birds in hours. No insects. Just that rising sound, like a whisper in a language she didn't understand. That night, Rachel pored over the pages, trying to decode Jonah's madness. There were mentions of paper doors, ink blood conduits, and something he called the weight of seeing. Lena translated as best she could. He believed art was a passage, not metaphorically, literally, that you could bind a soul to space using image and intent. Rachel looked at her. He trapped her in a drawing. Lena nodded. And the only way to reach her might be to draw her out. The next day they returned to Rachel's house. She cleared a table and laid out fresh parchment, Emily's old crayons, graphite pencils. Lena drew symbols around the perimeter. Rachel took a deep breath and began sketching. She drew the woods, the clearing, the cellar door, then the inside, just as she remembered it. The broken toys. The circle, but this time she added a door. One Emily could step through, then her daughter, taller now, but the same face from her dreams. She shaded carefully, hands trembling. Lena watched in silence. When Rachel finished, she stepped back. The room was still, but the drawing began to shimmer faintly at the edges like heat rising from pavement. Then a line appeared that she hadn't drawn. A hand reaching out from the inside of the door. Rachel gasped. She saw it. New lines formed on the page. A figure, Emily, now standing at the door. Behind her, a black shape, twisted, clawed hands reaching, and one word written in block letters. "Hurry," Lena whispered. She's still trying to escape. That night, Rachel dreamed again. Only this time, she didn't just see Emily. She felt her hand. Warm, real, pulling her towards something that wasn't entirely a dream. When she woke, the sketch on the table had changed again. Now it showed a path, leading from the cellar into a swirling void of color and shadow. In the distance, Emily stood, waiting. And beneath it, in tiny script, "You know the way." Jonah Kane was a name whispered in Ashland's darker corners long before Emily's disappearance. Rachel had heard fragments, stories tangled in rumor and fear. But only now, armed with the journal and the drawings, did the full picture begin to emerge. Jonah wasn't just a recluse. He was a child prodigy, born in 1942 with an extraordinary gift. His drawings seemed to capture not only what he saw, but what was about to happen. Local historians called him the boy who saw beyond. As a kid, Jonah spent most days holed up in his family's farmhouse near the edge of the woods, his small hands constantly smearing charcoal on paper. His art was unsettling even then. Shadowy figures, twisted trees, faces half erased. Neighbors remembered strange noises at night, faint cries that chilled the spine. Some swore they saw Jonah talking to someone invisible, his eyes glassy as if staring through the fabric of reality itself. One family friend said Jonah's mother was convinced her son was cursed. He told her things no child should know, the woman said years later, about doors between worlds, about things watching from the dark. Jonah's father died when he was 10, under mysterious circumstances. Some said he fell from a tree, others whispered of something darker. After that, Jonah's behavior changed. His drawings grew more frantic, his eyes haunted. He vanished in 1961. No one ever found him. What made this story echo so strongly now was the connection to Emily. Rachel found herself dreaming not only of her daughter, but of Jonah as a boy. Pale, thin, clutching a sketchbook, eyes wide with a mix of fear and wonder. In her dreams, she watched Jonah sitting at a sunlit window drawing endlessly. A small girl appeared beside him, silent, her face turned away. He reached out, but she slipped behind a door with no handle. Rachel woke one morning clutching an old photograph she'd found in a local archive. A faded black and white image of Jonah as a boy, sketchbook in hand. In the background, a blurry figure of a little girl stood just out of focus. That was Emily, or something like her. Lena Cross helped piece together Jonah's history from old police reports, diaries, and town records. The more they dug, the more their unease grew. His art had always been viewed as disturbing, but now it seemed almost prophetic. Some drawings depicted figures trapped inside frames, struggling against invisible walls. Others showed doorways bleeding ink instead of light. Jonah's last known sketchbook was sealed in an attic of an abandoned house nearby. Lena managed to retrieve it with permission. The pages were fragile, covered with strange symbols and half-formed shapes. One sketch showed Jonah as a young man, standing alone in a vast empty room. Beside him, a girl in a dress clung to his arm, her face shaded in darkness. Underneath, written in Jonah's shaky script, "She will stay forever unless someone draws her out." The words haunted Rachel. Could Emily be trapped, just like the girl in the drawing? Night after night, Rachel dreamt of Jonah and the girl. Sometimes she would hear Jonah's voice whispering through the wind, "She sees me, but I can't let her go, not yet." The dreams became more vivid, more urgent. One evening, as Rachel flipped through the journal recovered from the cellar, she came across a passage she hadn't noticed before. It described a ritual, an act of drawing that could bind or release souls between worlds. Jonah had believed his art was a prison and a key at the same time. Rachel stared at the words. She'll stay in the lines until the circle breaks. She realized that Emily's altered drawings were not random. They were a call for help, a coded message from a place Jonah had created, a world of ink and shadow where her daughter was held captive. Determined, Rachel shared this revelation with Lena. "We have to draw her out," Lena said quietly. Using the drawings as a bridge, Rachel's hands trembled at the thought. If Jonah had created a realm to trap Emily, could art really hold a soul? Could a drawing become a door? They planned their next move carefully. Rachel would attempt to recreate Jonah's drawings, but with one difference. She would add an exit, a path for Emily to follow. That night, Rachel sat at her kitchen table with pencils and paper, her heart pounding. She sketched the clearing, the cellar, the shadowed forest. But this time, she drew a door open wide, glowing with light. As she worked, she whispered to Emily, "I'm coming for you." Her voice cracked with hope and fear. After hours, she finished. The drawing pulsed faintly in the dim light, almost as if it breathed. Rachel knew the next steps would be the hardest, trying to communicate, to break the barrier between worlds. But for the first time in years, she felt a flicker of something she thought she'd lost forever: hope. Rachel's hands hovered over the paper, trembling slightly as she picked up a graphite pencil. She wasn't an artist, never had been, but now the lines she was about to draw could mean the difference between life and death. Lena sat beside her, watching intently. "This is the ritual," she explained softly, "using the drawings as a conduit, a bridge. You create a door for Emily to walk through." Rachel swallowed hard. "What if it doesn't work?" Lena shook her head. "It has to. If she's still trapped, this is the only way she can reach us." Rachel took a deep breath and began to sketch. First, she drew the forest, thick trunks bending toward a shadowy clearing, the place where Emily had vanished all those years ago. She traced every leaf, every crooked branch she could remember from the old photographs and journals. Then came the cellar, the wooden door hanging open, rusted hinges creaking in the breeze that only existed in her mind. She sketched broken toys scattered on the ground, a circle etched into the earth. Finally, she drew Emily. Not the frightened toddler lost in the woods, but a teenager, taller now, her face shadowed but recognizable. In her hand, a small, delicate key. Rachel shaded carefully, outlining a door just beyond Emily, a glowing portal open and waiting. When she laid down the pencil, the drawing shimmered faintly on the page, as if breathing. Lena nodded, eyes wide. "She's responding." That night, Rachel couldn't sleep. Her mind raced with hope and fear. What if Emily was really there? What if she could hear her mother's voice calling through the layers of time and space? Suddenly, the silence of the house was broken by a whisper. "I see you." Rachel's breath caught. The voice was faint, distant, yet unmistakably Emily's. She rushed to the drawing. It had changed. New lines had appeared, Emily reaching toward the door, but something was holding her back. A dark figure, long and twisted, clutching at her sleeve. Rachel's heart pounded. "She's trapped," she whispered. The next days became a ritual of drawing and waiting. Every morning, Rachel found new details sketched into the paper. Shadows twisting, symbols emerging, pathways unfolding. Each time the drawing pulsed with life, almost like a living map. Lena explained that the drawings acted like a beacon, a way for Emily to communicate, to tell them where she was and what was keeping her prisoner. But with each new detail came new dangers. Rachel began seeing shadows in her home, fleeting glimpses in the corners of her eyes, cold spots in rooms that had always been warm. One evening, Lena nearly collapsed during a session. Invisible forces seemed to press against her, choking her breath. Rachel caught her just in time, the woman gasping for air. "This place is connected," Lena said weakly. "Whatever holds Emily here is fighting back." Rachel refused to give up. She started drawing every day, mapping escape routes, secret doors, even a window opening to light. One drawing showed a figure emerging from the shadows, a man with hollow eyes and a sorrowful expression, Jonah Kane. Rachel shuddered. In the drawing, Jonah seemed to weep. Underneath, Emily had written in trembling script, "Draw his end." Rachel realized the ritual wasn't just about freeing Emily, it was about ending Jonah's hold, breaking the curse he had created. But the more she drew, the more the darkness pushed back. The house trembled one night as Rachel sketched Jonah's figure dissolving, the walls creaking like they might collapse. She whispered, "Hold on, Emily. I'm coming." The air in Rachel's home grew heavy, oppressive, like a storm trapped inside walls. Shadows no longer lurked just at the edges of vision. They moved deliberately, pressing close, twisting reality. One evening, Lena staggered into the room, pale and gasping. Rachel caught her before she collapsed onto the floor. "It's him," Lena whispered, eyes wide with terror. "Jonah Kane. He's here. Not a ghost. Something more." Rachel's heart thundered. "What does he want?" "He said, if Emily leaves, he fades. He's tied to her. He's the keeper of this place, this liminal world." Rachel clenched her fists. "Then we have to finish the drawings. End this." Days blurred. Rachel drew relentlessly, tracing Jonah's twisted form, shading in his sorrow and rage. The drawings pulsed with dark energy, the house trembling around her. Emily's latest message came in a drawing so faint it was barely visible, Jonah weeping, the world crumbling behind him. Rachel read the message aloud. "Draw his end." It was a command and a plea. Lena warned, "This is dangerous. Jonah won't give up without a fight." The next night, a violent storm roared outside, thunder shaking the windows. Inside, the house seemed alive, groaning and cracking. Rachel sat before her drawings, hands steady but heart racing. She traced Jonah's figure with the sharpest pencil she had, each line weakening his hold. Suddenly, the room grew icy cold. A shadow detached itself from the darkest corner, forming into a tall man, hollow eyes burning with grief and fury. "Why do you fight me?" Jonah's voice was low, a whisper and a roar at once. Rachel stood her ground. "Because you're holding her captive, because she deserves to be free." Jonah's expression flickered between rage and sadness. "If she leaves, I cease. I was never meant to be this. But I can't lose her." "Emily's not yours," Rachel said firmly. "She's a child. She needs to live." The shadow recoiled, but then lunged. Rachel barely dodged, knocking over her drawings. The room shook violently, paper swirling in a dark wind. Lena screamed from the hallway, held back by invisible forces. Rachel fought through the chaos, dragging her friend inside. Lena coughed, eyes wild. "We have to finish," Rachel said breathlessly, "before he breaks us." The next days were a blur of pain and determination. Rachel's hands ached, but she pushed on, drawing the final scenes. Jonah fading, the world unraveling, the door wide open. Each sketch weakened the shadow's presence. The air lightened, warmth returning. On the last night, Rachel's pencil moved with a strength born of desperation. She drew Jonah dissolving into dust, tears falling like ink. As the final line was laid, the house shook violently one last time, then fell silent. The darkness retreated. The weight lifted. Lena looked at Rachel, exhausted but hopeful. "It's over," Rachel whispered, "or just the beginning." Rachel's world tilted as she felt herself pulled forward, through the paper, through the door she had drawn so carefully. The edges of reality blurred and melted like wet ink, colors bleeding into one another. The forest from her drawings stretched endlessly before her, warped and twisted, alive with shadows that flickered just beyond sight. She was inside the drawing. The air here was thick like paint drying on a canvas, but it shimmered with a strange light. The sky above was streaked with impossible hues, deep purples bleeding into reds and black. Rachel's heart pounded as she stepped cautiously, calling Emily's name. "Mom!" The voice was faint but real. Ahead, a girl emerged, Taller than the child, Rachel remembered. Older now, her face pale but unmistakable. Emily's eyes were wide, filled with a mixture of hope and fear. "Mum," Emily whispered, "I've been waiting." Rachel ran to her daughter, embracing her tightly. The girl's hands trembled in hers. Around them, the forest pulsed, alive with shadows and whispers. Emily pulled back and pointed toward a narrow path leading deeper into the painted wilderness. "That's where Jonah keeps me. I have to keep drawing to keep the walls strong or he breaks through." Rachel swallowed hard. "We're here to get you out." But the world around them shifted, growing darker. From the shadows emerged a figure, Jonah Kane, but not the ghostly man Rachel had imagined. He was solid, more real than anything Rachel had ever seen. His eyes were hollow wells of sorrow and rage. "I cannot lose her," he said, voice like a cold wind. "She belongs here with me." Rachel stepped forward. "Emily is not yours to keep. She's my daughter, and she's coming home." Jonah's expression flickered. "If she leaves, I cease. I was never meant to be this, but I cannot let go." Emily clutched Rachel's hand. "He's the reason I'm stuck. The more I draw, the stronger he gets. If we leave now, everything collapses." Rachel's breath caught. "Then we have to be faster." They moved cautiously along the path, the forest twisting and shifting with each step. Colors bled off trees, the ground beneath their feet swirling like liquid ink. Emily led Rachel to a small clearing, a room painted in shadow and light where endless canvases lined the walls. Each canvas showed moments frozen in time. Emily as a child, Rachel calling her name, the woods in various states of decay and hope. "This is where I paint," Emily said. "If I stop, Jonah wins." Rachel knelt beside her daughter. "Then we finish the drawing together." For hours, mother and daughter worked, hands trembling but steady. They drew doorways, windows, paths leading out of the painted world. With every stroke, the room brightened. Jonah's shadow retreated. But just as they completed the final doorway, a roar shattered the silence. Jonah appeared again, rage burning in his eyes. "You cannot leave," he snarled. "This world is mine." Rachel stood firm. "Not anymore." She reached for the doorway, pulling Emily with her. Jonah lunged, but as they stepped through, the painted world began to unravel. Colors tore apart, shapes dissolving into nothingness. Rachel felt herself falling, then waking up gasping in her own home, clutching a drawing freshly sketched, with Emily smiling free. The weight of years pressed on Rachel's shoulders as she sat before her table, the final drawing spread before her. This was the culmination, one last act to sever the ties that bound her daughter to the shadowed realm. Emily's message was clear. Draw him forgetting. Rachel stared at those words, the trembling ink whispering a hope she dared to grasp. If Jonah Kane's hold was anchored in memory, in pain and fear, then erasing that was the key. She dipped her pencil in black, beginning to sketch Jonah's figure. Hollow eyes now clouded, expressions fading. With every stroke, she imagined peeling away his memories, his purpose, the terrible grip he had on Emily's soul. The house around her grew silent. The air thickened with tension, as if reality itself held its breath. Outside, the wind howled, rattling windows, but inside, time slowed. Jonah's shadow lurked at the edges of perception, growing weaker with each line. Rachel could almost hear him scream, a sound torn between rage and despair. "I cannot lose her," his voice echoed faintly. But the drawing was complete. Rachel held her breath, praying. Then the world around her began to tremble violently. The floor beneath her feet quaked, walls groaned as though protesting the unraveling. A dark wind swept through the room, tearing at curtains and papers. Rachel gripped the table, steadying herself. In her mind's eye, she saw Emily, still trapped in that painted world, waiting. "Hold on, baby," Rachel whispered. Suddenly the shaking stopped. An eerie calm filled the space. Rachel dared to breathe again. The drawings lay still, but their edges flickered with a fading light. She knew Jonah's presence was slipping away, but something wasn't right. A new drawing appeared on the table. Emily, alone, running toward a door. Beneath it, a message. "You must be faster. Rachel's heart pounded. Time was running out. She raced to her phone, calling Lena. "We need to find her. Now." Together they returned to the forest clearing, the place where it all began. The cellar door was gone, replaced by a glowing portal, pulsing with light and shadow intertwined. Rachel stepped forward, feeling the pull of the otherworldly. Inside she found Emily, young yet older, fragile but strong, painting rapidly on canvases that shimmered with life. "I was afraid," Emily said softly. "But I had to keep the world stable. If it collapsed, he would come back." Rachel hugged her tightly. "We're here now. It's over." But before they could leave, the portal flickered violently. Jonah appeared, a final attempt. Rachel stood firm, holding Emily's hand. "Draw the door," Emily whispered. Together they sketched the last stroke, an exit glowing with hope. Jonah screamed, dissolving into nothingness as the painted world collapsed behind them. They stepped through. Rachel woke, gasping in her home, clutching a fresh drawing. Emily, smiling, free. The world felt different when Emily returned. The same, yet changed in ways Rachel couldn't quite explain. 14 years of absence vanished in an instant when the door opened and her daughter stepped through, pale, disoriented, but alive. The town buzzed with disbelief. DNA tests confirmed it. Emily Whitmore was back. But her mind was still trapped in the painted world. She spoke in colors and drawings at first, tracing shapes and symbols on paper instead of words. Rachel watched as her daughter's eyes flickered with memories no one else could understand. Doctors called it trauma, post-traumatic stress, the brain's way of coping. But Rachel knew better. Emily had been somewhere beyond explanation. Slowly, the girl began to regain her voice, but her language was different, cryptic, filled with warnings. "He's coming next," Emily said one afternoon, eyes wide. Rachel's heart clenched. "Who, baby?" She pointed to the shadows near the window, where the light didn't reach. The community held its breath. Parents locked doors tighter. The police increased patrols around the woods. Rachel and Emily settled into a fragile new routine. Therapy sessions, police interviews, quiet moments of hope and fear. One evening, Emily handed Rachel a new drawing. It was simple, a mother holding a baby standing at the edge of the forest. Beneath it, a message: "Prepare." Rachel swallowed her dread. The battle wasn't over. She looked into the camera now, her voice steady but urgent. If you found this story as chilling as I did, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more incredible mysteries and stories that defy explanation. She nodded toward the side. And don't forget to click on the video on your screen now to discover what happened when another missing child spoke from beyond. You won't want to miss it. The screen faded, but the message lingered. Because some shadows never disappear.